Prisoner of war fell in love with her Lakota captor. Sacred river ceremony made them one. The wind moved slowly across the wide plains, bending tall grass in soft waves that stretched as far as the eye could see. The sky above was open and endless, painted with pale blue and drifting clouds. In the distance, faint smoke rose from a battlefield long abandoned, where echoes of conflict still lingered like a memory that refused to fade. A young soldier walked alone across this vast land, his steps uneven and slow. Dust covered his uniform and his face showed exhaustion deeper than simple tiredness. He had become separated from his unit after chaos scattered men in every direction. Now he carried only a small canteen, an empty pack, and the heavy weight of uncertainty. He did not know where he was going. He only knew he had to keep moving. Each step felt heavier than the last, and his thoughts wandered between fear and determination. The sounds of war still rang in his ears, the shouting, the thunder of weapons, the confusion that turned order into panic. He had followed commands without question, like every soldier was trained to do. Yet now, alone under the wide sky, those commands felt distant and unreal. The land itself seemed alive, watching him. Birds circled above, their shadows gliding over the ground. The air carried the scent of earth and wild plants. He had never spent so much time away from camp or city, and the silence felt both peaceful and unsettling. He stopped near a small ridge, kneeling to drink the last drops of water from his canteen. When it ran dry, he stared at it for a long moment, knowing Shen, then sighed and stood again. He did not realize he was being watched. Hidden among rocks and tall grass, a small group of Lakota scouts observed him quietly. They moved with patience and purpose, blending into the land as if they were part of it. At their center stood a woman known among her people for her calm strength and clear judgment. She wore practical clothing suited for travel and carried herself with confidence shaped by experience. Her eyes studied the lone soldier carefully, noticing the way he struggled to walk, the way he scanned the horizon without truly seeing it. She raised one hand slightly, signaling the others to remain still. The scouts waited for her decision. To them, he was an enemy. The war had taken much from their people: land, family, peace. Many would say that finding a soldier alone like this was simple fate. Yet she did not move immediately. She watched longer, noticing details others might miss. The way his shoulders slumped, the way he paused often as if fighting dizziness, the way he showed no signs of preparing an attack. After several minutes, she finally stepped forward. The soldier heard movement behind him and turned quickly, his body stiff with sudden alarm. Before he could react further, he saw figures emerging from the grass, silent and steady, his breath caught. He knew who they were before anyone spoke. Fear tightened in his chest, and instinct told him to run, but exhaustion held him in place. He raised his hands slowly, unsure of what else to do. The Lakota woman approached him with measured steps. Her expression remained calm, neither cruel nor friendly. She studied his face closely, searching for intention. He tried to speak, but his voice came out dry and weak. The language barrier stood between them like an invisible wall, yet meaning passed through gestures and tone. He showed empty hands. She noticed the injury on his side and the unsteady way he stood. One of the scouts spoke sharply, clearly suggesting a harsher action, but she answered with a quiet firmness that ended the discussion. Her decision was final. The soldier did not understand the words, but he sensed that she had chosen something different than what others expected. They took his weapons away carefully, then motioned for him to walk. He obeyed without resistance, knowing he had little choice. As they moved across the land, he wondered what would happen to him. Every story he had heard about the enemy returned to his mind, filling him with dread. Yet no one struck him or shouted. They walked with discipline, watching him but not treating him with open anger. Hours passed before they reached a camp set near a line of trees beside a river. Smoke rose from small fires, and voices carried through the air. Children played near the edge of the camp while elders sat together, speaking quietly. When the group arrived, many eyes turned toward the prisoner. Curiosity mixed with caution spread through the gathered people. The woman spoke with other leaders, explaining what had happened. Some reacted with concern, others with frustration. The soldier stood silently, unable to understand the words, but aware that his fate was being discussed. Eventually, they guided him to a place where he could sit and rest. Someone brought water, placing it near him without speaking. He hesitated before drinking, unsure if it was a test, then finally accepted it with a small nod of gratitude. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. He was watched closely but not mistreated. The Lakota woman visited often, checking on his condition. She maintained distance, yet there was something thoughtful in the way she observed him, as if she was trying to understand more than just who he was. He struggled with conflicting emotions. Part of him expected danger at any moment. Another part felt a strange sense of calm within the rhythms of camp life. He watched people working together, preparing food, repairing tools, caring for children. Laughter appeared in moments he did not expect. He began to realize that the people he had been taught to fear lived lives not so different from his own. At night, stories were shared around fires. He could not understand the language, but the tone carried meaning, joy, sadness, memory. Music rose into the dark sky, blending with the sound of the river. Sometimes he caught the Lakota woman watching him from across the firelight. Their eyes would meet briefly before she looked away. Slowly, his strength returned. With strength came awareness, and with awareness came questions. Why had she spared him? Why had she chosen to keep him alive instead of ending his life like many would expect during war? One evening, as the sun set in deep orange colors over the plains, she approached him again. She spoke slowly, using gestures to ask if he understood simple tasks. When he nodded, she motioned toward a nearby area where tools lay scattered. She seemed to be testing whether he could help or learn. He followed carefully, aware that every action mattered. The first attempts were awkward. He misunderstood instructions and made mistakes. Yet she did not show anger. Instead, she demonstrated patiently, repeating motions until he understood. Communication began to form not through words, but through shared effort. Each small success built a fragile bridge between them. Still, tension remained. Some members of the camp watched him with distrust. He heard sharp tones when people spoke near him, and he knew he had not been fully accepted. Yet others began to greet him with cautious curiosity. A child once approached him with a small carved object, offering it shyly before running away. That moment stayed with him long after. As days turned into weeks, he realized that his understanding of the world was changing. The war felt far away, yet its shadow remained. He did not know if he would ever return to his old life. For now, he lived between two identities: prisoner and guest, enemy and learner. The Lakota woman continued to observe him closely. She noticed how he listened during gatherings, how he avoided conflict, how he worked hard despite uncertainty. Something about his quiet determination challenged her expectations. She had seen many enemies before, but none quite like this. One night, as stars filled the sky like countless small lights, they stood near the river at the same time. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. The sound of water moving over stones created a steady rhythm. He looked at the flowing river and then at her, unsure how to express what he felt. He placed a hand over his heart briefly, then gestured toward the camp, trying to show gratitude. She watched him carefully, then nodded once, acknowledging his effort. It was a small moment, almost invisible to others, but it marked the beginning of something new, an understanding that went beyond war, beyond fear, and beyond the labels they had carried before meeting. Neither of them knew where this path would lead. The future remained uncertain, shaped by forces larger than both of them. Yet within that uncertainty, a quiet connection had begun to grow, like a seed planted beside the sacred river, waiting for time to reveal its true strength. Morning light spread slowly across the camp, turning the sky pale gold as the first sounds of daily life began to rise. Smoke curled gently upward from small fires, and people moved with quiet purpose. The soldier woke early, still unused to sleeping under open skies instead of within the strict structure of military tents. The ground felt different beneath him, and every morning reminded him that his life had changed in ways he had never expected. He sat up slowly, watching the camp come alive. Children ran past laughing softly. Elders prepared food and hunters gathered their tools. The rhythm of the community felt steady and natural, guided by routines shaped over generations. No loud commands echoed through the air, like in his old life. Instead, people seemed to know their roles without needing to be told. He noticed the Lakota woman standing nearby, speaking with several others. Her presence carried quiet authority. People listened to her carefully, and even when she spoke softly, her words seemed to hold weight. When she saw him awake, she gave a small nod, signaling that the day's work would begin soon. At first, he felt unsure of where to stand or what to do. In the army, everything had clear instructions. Here he had to observe and learn without understanding the language fully. The woman approached and gestured toward a pile of tools and materials. She showed him how to carry water from the river using a large container. The task looked simple, yet balancing the container while walking over uneven ground proved challenging. He nearly stumbled on his first attempt, causing a few nearby watchers to exchange amused looks. Embarrassment warmed his face, but he refused to give up. He tried again, adjusting his grip and slowing his steps. The woman watched silently, her expression calm but attentive. When he completed the task successfully, she gave a slight approving nod. That small gesture filled him with unexpected pride. Days passed with similar lessons. He helped repair small structures, gathered firewood, and learned how to prepare simple meals. Every task felt like a test, not only of skill but of character. Some members of the camp continued to watch him with suspicion. They spoke in serious tones when he walked by, and he sensed that many still saw him only as an enemy. One afternoon, a strong wind brought dark clouds across the plains. The sky turned heavy, and the air grew colder. People began securing belongings and preparing for a storm. He followed their movements, trying to help without being asked. The wind grew stronger, bending trees and scattering dust across the ground. During the storm, a small shelter near the edge of the camp began to loosen. A child ran toward it, trying to hold on to something inside. Without thinking, the soldier rushed forward. Rain soaked his clothes as he grabbed the structure and helped stabilize it, until others arrived to secure it properly. The effort left him exhausted, but the child smiled at him with clear gratitude.
After that moment, the way some people looked at him changed.
The distrust did not disappear, but curiosity replaced some of the tension. He realized that actions spoke louder than words, especially when language failed. The Lakota woman observed everything carefully. She saw how he reacted during difficult moments, how he chose to help even when no one demanded it. Her role as a leader required caution, and she reminded herself not to let emotion influence judgment. Still, she began to see him not only as a prisoner, but as a person shaped by circumstances beyond his control. Communication between them slowly improved. She began teaching him simple words by pointing to objects and repeating their names. He responded by sharing words from his own language. Sometimes they laughed at misunderstandings, and those moments eased the tension between them. One evening, as they worked together repairing a tool, he tried to explain through gestures that he had once built similar equipment. She watched closely, allowing him to demonstrate. His hands moved with practiced skill, showing knowledge beyond simple labor. For the first time, she seemed surprised by what he could do. The camp gathered around fires at night, sharing stories and songs. Though he did not understand the language, he listened carefully, feeling the emotion carried by each voice. The sound of drums created a steady rhythm that seemed to connect everyone present. He began to feel less like an outsider and more like someone slowly learning a new world. Yet inner conflict remained strong within him. He often thought about his former companions. Were they searching for him? Did they believe he was lost forever? The memory of his old life felt distant, but not forgotten. At times he wondered whether he should try to escape, but the thought faded quickly. He knew he would not survive alone without understanding the land, and part of him did not want to leave. The woman faced her own challenges. Some warriors questioned her decision to keep him alive. They spoke of danger and tradition, reminding her of losses caused by past conflicts. She listened patiently, acknowledging their concerns without changing her decision. She believed that strength sometimes meant choosing a path others did not expect. One day she invited him to join a hunting group. The invitation surprised many, including him. He followed quietly, determined not to cause problems. Watching the hunters move across the plains taught him lessons about patience and respect for nature. They did not rush or shout. Every movement had purpose. When the hunt succeeded, he helped carry supplies back to camp. The shared effort created a sense of belonging he had not felt before. Later that night, someone offered him food with a warm smile instead of cautious distance. That small change meant more than he could express. As weeks passed, he began to understand gestures and expressions even without words. The camp no longer felt entirely foreign. He learned to wake with the sunrise, to listen to the wind, and to notice small signs in nature. The Lakota woman continued guiding him quietly, sometimes stepping back to let him learn on his own. One evening, a disagreement broke out among several warriors about whether he could be trusted fully. Voices rose, and tension filled the air. He stood at a distance, unable to follow the words but aware that he was the subject of debate. The woman spoke firmly, her tone steady. Slowly, the argument faded. Later, she approached him and gestured for patience, as if reassuring him that time would decide his place among them. The growing connection between them remained subtle. They rarely spoke openly about feelings, yet shared moments revealed trust forming beneath the surface. When he struggled with a task, she showed him again without frustration. When she faced pressure from others, he offered quiet support by working harder and avoiding actions that might cause trouble. One night, a clear sky revealed countless stars. He sat alone near the edge of the camp, staring upward. She joined him silently, sitting a short distance away. The quiet felt comfortable rather than awkward. He pointed toward the stars, tracing shapes he remembered from childhood stories. She watched with interest, then pointed to different patterns known to her people. Though they used different languages, the shared experience created a bridge between their worlds. The river nearby continued to flow steadily, reflecting moonlight like silver. He realized that his fear had slowly changed into something else: respect, curiosity, and perhaps even admiration for the people who had once been strangers. The woman beside him represented strength, balanced with kindness, and he felt drawn toward that balance without fully understanding why. The days moved forward with growing familiarity. He was no longer only a prisoner watched from a distance. He became part of daily life, even if acceptance was not complete. Each shared task, each quiet conversation built another layer of trust. Neither of them spoke about the future. War still existed beyond the horizon, and uncertainty remained part of their reality. Yet within the camp something important had begun to grow, an understanding that two people from opposite sides could learn from each other. The bond between them remained unspoken but undeniable, shaped by shared effort and mutual respect. As the wind carried the scent of approaching autumn across the plains, both sensed that change was coming. The peaceful routine could not last forever, and choices would soon test everything they had built together. For now, they continued moving forward one day at a time, allowing trust to deepen slowly like the steady flow of the sacred river nearby. The change came slowly, almost so quietly that neither of them noticed it at first. Days passed in steady rhythm, shaped by work, shared responsibilities, and the calm flow of life beside the river. The soldier had stopped counting how long he had been in the camp. Time felt different here. Without strict schedules or loud commands, each day blended gently into the next, guided by the movement of the sun and the needs of the people around him. He no longer woke with fear tightening his chest. Instead, he rose with purpose, knowing there were tasks waiting for him. Some mornings he helped gather wood with the younger men, learning how to choose branches that burned cleanly. Other days he repaired tools or carried supplies. The work was honest and steady, and he found quiet satisfaction in completing it well. People in the camp began to speak to him more often, using simple gestures or a few shared words they had taught him. A child often followed him, asking questions with curious eyes even though he understood little of the answers. Laughter became more common around him, replacing the earlier silence and suspicion. The Lakota woman watched these changes with careful attention. She noticed how he listened before acting, how he treated elders with respect, and how he never took more than his share during meals. These small details mattered deeply in our culture. Still, she reminded herself that trust must grow slowly, like roots beneath the earth. Their connection deepened through shared work. One afternoon they traveled together to gather herbs along the riverbank. The water moved steadily beside them, reflecting sunlight in shifting patterns. She showed him how certain plants were used for healing and others for food. He listened closely, repeating the names she spoke until he could say them correctly. When he finally pronounced one word perfectly, she allowed a rare smile to appear. Brief, but warm. He felt a quiet sense of accomplishment at that moment, stronger than he expected. The distance between them felt smaller, replaced by growing understanding. At night, storytelling around the fire became one of his favorite parts of the day. Though he still could not follow every word, he learned to recognize expressions and emotional tones. One evening, an elder told a long story about balance in life and how opposites could create harmony when guided by respect. The elder spoke of rivers bringing together waters from different lands, blending them into something stronger. The soldier listened carefully, feeling as though the story carried meaning meant for him. He noticed the Lakota woman glancing toward him during that story. Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them. Neither looked away quickly. Instead, they held the moment for a heartbeat longer before turning back toward the fire. Rumors began quietly among some members of the camp. People noticed the way they worked together and how often they chose to stand near each other during gatherings. Some viewed this with curiosity, others with concern. The woman heard whispers but did not respond openly. Leadership required patience, and she refused to let rumors control her actions. Inside, however, she felt conflict growing. She had always guided her decisions through responsibility to her people. Allowing personal feelings to influence her judgment felt dangerous. Yet every day she saw new reasons to respect the soldier. He listened when corrected, helped without complaint, and never acted with arrogance. One morning during a hunting trip, the soldier walked beside her across open plains. The air felt cool, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. They moved quietly, following tracks left by animals. At one point he slipped on uneven ground, nearly falling. She reached out instinctively to steady him, her hand gripping his arm firmly. The touch lasted only a moment, yet both felt its impact. They stepped apart quickly, focusing on the task ahead, but awareness lingered between them. Later that day, they shared a meal beneath a tree, speaking through gestures and simple words. He pointed toward the horizon, describing his old life with careful movements. She listened without interrupting. He showed sadness when speaking of lost friends and confusion about the war itself. She responded by placing her hand gently over her heart, acknowledging his feelings without needing many words. As weeks continued, emotional closeness grew naturally. They often found themselves standing together during gatherings or sharing quiet moments near the river. Neither spoke openly about what was forming between them. Yet everyone around them could sense change. At the same time, external tension began to rise. Scouts returned with news that soldiers had been seen traveling nearby. The camp reacted with caution. People prepared quietly, gathering supplies and watching the horizon more carefully. The possibility of renewed conflict cast a shadow over daily life. The soldier felt his stomach tighten when he heard this news. He knew those soldiers might be searching for him or others like him. The thought of facing his former world again filled him with mixed emotions. Part of him felt loyalty to where he came from, yet another part felt rooted here in ways he had never imagined. The Lakota woman struggled with her own worries. As a leader, she had to think about the safety of her people first. Keeping a former enemy within the camp could bring risk if other soldiers discovered their location. She found herself questioning whether her earlier decision had been wise. One evening she walked alone along the river, thinking deeply. The water moved steadily, carrying fallen leaves downstream. She reflected on everything that had changed since the day she found him injured and alone. She had expected him to remain distant, yet instead he had become part of the rhythm of life here. When she returned to camp, she found him repairing a broken tool under fading sunlight. He looked up as she approached, sensing the seriousness in her expression. Though words were limited between them, he understood that something weighed heavily on her mind. She gestured toward the horizon where the scouts had seen soldiers. He nodded slowly, understanding the danger. For a long moment they stood silently, acknowledging the reality they both faced. He surprised her by placing his hand over his chest and then pointing away from the camp, suggesting that he could leave if necessary. The gesture showed willingness to protect the community even at personal risk. She felt a sudden wave of emotion but remained calm outwardly. She shook her head slightly, not giving an immediate answer. The decision was not simple. Leadership required careful thought, and personal feelings complicated everything further. In the days that followed, tension continued building. Some members of the camp argued quietly that the soldier's presence might bring trouble. Others defended him, pointing to his actions and growing connection with the community. The debate remained respectful but serious. Despite the uncertainty, moments of peace still existed. One night under a sky filled with stars, music rose again around the fire. People danced slowly, moving in harmony with the rhythm of drums. The soldier watched from a distance until someone invited him to join. Hesitant at first, he followed simple steps, laughing softly at his own awkwardness. The Lakota woman watched him with amusement and something softer beneath it. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away quickly. The connection between them felt clear, even without words. The sacred river continued flowing beside them, constant and unchanging despite the shifting world around it. Elders began speaking more often about balance and guidance from the spirits, as if sensing that important decisions approached. Both of them felt the weight of choices yet to come. War existed beyond the horizon, threatening to pull them back into old roles. Yet within the camp, trust and understanding had grown into something deeper, something neither had planned or expected. As autumn winds began carrying colder air across the plains, the bond between them felt stronger than ever, shaped by shared experiences, quiet respect, and growing affection that could no longer be ignored. The future remained uncertain, but one truth had become clear. The path ahead would test not only their loyalty to their pasts, but also their courage to follow what their hearts were beginning to understand. The air felt different as the days moved forward. The calm rhythm of camp life remained, but underneath it a quiet tension grew stronger. People spoke more softly than before, and scouts returned often with updates about movements beyond the hills. The possibility of outside soldiers coming closer changed how everyone moved and planned. Fires were kept smaller at night, and watchers stood at the edges of camp more frequently. The soldier sensed the change even before anyone explained it to him through gestures. He noticed how conversations paused when he approached, and how leaders gathered together more often. Though he could not understand every word, he knew he was part of the reason for their concern. The Lakota woman carried the weight of leadership heavily during this time. Each decision mattered, not only for herself but for the safety of every person in the camp. She listened to elders, warriors, and families, giving space for everyone's voice. Some believed that keeping the former enemy among them was dangerous now that outside forces were nearby. Others argued that he had proven his respect and should be trusted. She remained calm during every discussion, yet inside she felt torn between responsibility and personal emotion. She had never allowed her feelings to interfere with leadership before, and now she wondered if she could remain fair, while her heart felt pulled in different directions. One evening she called for a gathering near the central fire. People sat in a wide circle, faces lit by flickering flames. The soldier sat slightly apart, unsure if he should be present, but she gestured for him to stay. That small act surprised many, yet no one spoke against it openly. The discussion moved slowly. Elders spoke first, sharing wisdom about balance and patience. Warriors described the risk of being discovered. Families spoke about fear and hope for peace. Throughout the gathering, the soldier listened quietly, watching expressions and body language to understand the mood. At one point, the Lakota woman stood and spoke for a long time. Her voice remained steady and calm. She acknowledged the risks but also spoke about compassion and understanding. Though the soldier could not follow every word, he recognized that she defended him, not with emotion alone, but with reason and respect. When she finished, silence filled the air. No final decision was made that night. Instead, people agreed to continue watching and preparing while seeking guidance through tradition. Later, she walked alone toward the river, needing space to think. The water reflected the moon, moving endlessly forward. She knelt beside it, touching the surface lightly, as if asking for clarity. Leadership required strength, but strength sometimes meant admitting uncertainty. The soldier followed at a distance, unsure whether to approach. When she noticed him, she did not send him away. They stood beside the river, without speaking for several moments. The sound of flowing water filled the silence between them. He tried to express his thoughts through simple gestures. He pointed toward the camp, then toward himself, and finally toward the horizon, indicating that he would leave if his presence caused danger. His expression showed sincerity and concern for the people who had welcomed him. Her reaction came slowly. She shook her head gently at first, not rejecting the idea completely but asking for patience. She pointed toward the water and then toward the sky, showing that decisions required time and reflection. The following days felt heavier. Scouts reported signs that soldiers might pass near the region soon. People began preparing to move camp if necessary. Tents were repaired, supplies organized, and routes discussed quietly. The soldier worked harder than ever during this time, determined to help however he could. He carried extra loads, assisted elders, and stayed alert during night watches when allowed. His actions did not go unnoticed. Even those who had doubted him began to see his loyalty more clearly. One afternoon, an elder approached him and handed him a carved wooden object shaped like a small river stone. Though no words were exchanged, the gesture felt meaningful. The soldier accepted it carefully, understanding that it symbolized growing acceptance. Meanwhile, the Lakota woman faced increasing pressure from a few warriors who believed she was letting emotion influence her leadership. They questioned whether she could remain fair while protecting someone who once belonged to the opposing side. She listened without anger, answering calmly but firmly that decisions would come from wisdom, not fear. Despite the tension, moments of quiet connection continued between her and the soldier. One evening they worked together repairing a broken canoe near the riverbank. The task required patience and cooperation. As they worked, they laughed softly when mistakes happened, easing the heaviness of the day. During a pause, she studied him closely, as if trying to understand what had changed within her. He met her gaze without hesitation, offering a small smile that carried warmth and gratitude. In that moment, the distance between leader and prisoner felt almost gone. As the time for decision approached, elders suggested holding a sacred river ceremony. This ceremony was meant to seek guidance and clarity during important moments of change. The idea was welcomed by many, as it allowed tradition to lead the path forward instead of conflict. Preparations began immediately. People gathered special herbs, cleaned ceremonial clothing, and spoke with respect about the meaning of the ritual. The soldier watched carefully, sensing that this event held deep significance. The Lakota woman explained through gestures that the ceremony would help decide the future, both for the camp and for him. He nodded slowly, feeling a mix of hope and nervousness. Though he did not understand every detail, he trusted the process because he trusted her. The day of the ceremony arrived with clear skies and gentle wind. The river shimmered under sunlight, and people gathered quietly along its edge. Elders led prayers, their voices calm and steady. Songs rose into the air, blending with the sound of flowing water. The soldier stood beside the group, unsure where he belonged, but feeling honored to be included. The Lakota woman stood nearby, her posture strong yet thoughtful. She glanced at him briefly, offering reassurance without words. During the ritual, participants stepped into the shallow water one by one, symbolizing renewal and transformation. When it was his turn, he hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. The cold water moved around his feet, grounding him in the present. As he stood there, he felt the weight of his journey, from lost soldier to someone accepted by a new community. He looked toward her, and she met his gaze steadily. Something deep and unspoken passed between them, stronger than fear or doubt. The ceremony ended with quiet reflection. No immediate decision was announced, but everyone sensed that change was coming soon. The tension that had filled the camp began to shift into something calmer, guided by tradition and shared understanding. That night, as stars filled the sky, both of them felt that they stood at the edge of a new chapter. The sacred river had carried their stories together, and now it waited to see which path they would choose. The morning after the sacred river ceremony felt different from any day before. The air seemed lighter, as if the land itself had taken a deep breath. People moved through the camp with calm focus, and even the usual sounds of daily work carried a quieter energy. The river continued flowing beside them, steady and endless, reflecting the soft colors of sunrise. The soldier woke early, his thoughts filled with memories of the ceremony. Standing in the water had stirred emotions he could not fully describe. It felt like leaving behind an old life and stepping into something unknown but meaningful. He held the carved wooden object the elder had given him, turning it slowly in his hands while watching the camp begin another day. He noticed the Lakota woman speaking with elders near the central fire. Their discussion looked serious but peaceful. She listened carefully, nodding at times, her posture strong and calm. He sensed that decisions were being made, though he did not know what they would mean for him. As he worked alongside others preparing food and repairing supplies, he felt both hopeful and uncertain. He had grown used to the rhythm of this life, yet the possibility of change lingered in every conversation and glance. Later that morning she approached him with a steady expression. She gestured for him to walk with her toward the river. The path felt familiar now, lined with stones worn smooth by years of flowing water. When they reached a quiet place away from the main camp, she paused and turned to face him. She spoke slowly, using simple words he had learned along with clear gestures. She explained that the elders had reached a decision. He listened closely, his heart beating faster. She pointed toward the camp and then toward him, showing that he was no longer considered only a prisoner. Through his actions and patience, he had earned trust. Relief filled him, followed by gratitude so strong he struggled to express it. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed his head slightly, hoping she understood how much the decision meant to him. She smiled gently, though her eyes showed emotion deeper than simple happiness. She then explained another part of the decision. The camp would soon move to a different location to avoid possible encounters with outside soldiers. The journey would be long, and everyone would have to work together closely. He nodded, ready to help however he could. Yet beneath his acceptance, he sensed that something more remained unsaid. For the next several days, preparation filled every moment. Tents were carefully packed, tools secured, and routes planned. The soldier worked tirelessly, lifting heavy loads and assisting anyone who needed help. His effort earned quiet respect from those who once doubted him. During one evening gathering, an elder stood and spoke about unity. Though the soldier could not understand every word, he recognized familiar themes from earlier stories. The idea that life brings unexpected connections, and that harmony grows when people choose understanding over fear. As the sun set, music rose again around the fire. People sang songs that carried history and hope together. The soldier found himself sitting beside the Lakota woman, their shoulders nearly touching. The closeness felt natural now, no longer filled with hesitation. The following morning, the camp began its journey. Horses carried supplies while people walked in steady lines across the plains. The wide land stretched before them, filled with rolling hills and open sky. The soldier walked near her, helping guide animals and watching for obstacles along the path. Traveling together deepened the sense of belonging he felt. Shared effort created quiet moments of laughter and conversation. Children ran ahead, exploring while elders guided the pace. The journey felt less like escape and more like moving toward a new chapter. One afternoon they stopped near another stretch of the river. As people set up temporary shelters, the soldier and the Lakota woman walked along the water's edge. The sunlight danced on the surface and birds flew low over the current. He paused and looked at her, searching for words he barely knew. With simple gestures he tried to express how much she had changed his life. He pointed toward himself, then toward her, and finally toward the river, showing that their paths had joined like flowing water. She listened quietly, her expression softening. She touched the carved wooden object he still carried and nodded, understanding more than his limited words could convey. For a long moment they stood facing each other, the world around them fading into peaceful silence. As evening approached, elders called everyone together again. This time the gathering felt more like a celebration than a serious council. The journey had gone well, and people felt hopeful about the future. During the gathering, an elder spoke directly to the soldier, using gestures to include him in the circle. Though he could not understand every phrase, he sensed acceptance and welcome. The Lakota woman stood beside him as part of the ceremony. The elder placed both of their hands over the flowing water, symbolizing unity and shared paths. The moment felt powerful, filled with meaning beyond words. People watched with calm approval, and some smiled gently. Afterward, as the sky turned deep blue with evening light, they walked together back toward the camp. The soldier felt a peace he had never known before. The fear that once filled his heart had been replaced by respect, gratitude, and a growing love he no longer tried to deny. Life continued with new routines in the new location. He learned more about traditions, language, and ways of living that honored nature. She continued guiding her people with wisdom and strength, yet she allowed herself to show warmth more openly when he was near. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally. They shared responsibilities, supported each other during challenges, and found comfort in quiet moments beside the river. People in the camp accepted their bond, understanding that love could grow from unexpected beginnings. One evening, as the sun set behind distant hills, they stood together watching the water flow endlessly forward. The past no longer felt like a dividing line between them, but rather a path that had led them to this place. He realized that he no longer thought of himself as an outsider. He had become part of something larger than himself, a community built on trust, patience, and shared understanding. She looked at him with calm confidence, no longer questioning whether her feelings conflicted with her duty. Instead, she saw that compassion and leadership could exist together. Their journey from strangers to partners symbolized hope not only for them but for everyone who believed that peace could grow from understanding. The river continued its steady journey, carrying stories of change and renewal. Standing beside it, they felt connected not only to each other but to the land, the people, and the future they would shape together. And so their story moved forward, not as a tale of enemies divided by war, but as a reminder that respect, patience, and courage can transform even the most unlikely paths into something meaningful and lasting.